Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the IKO Audio OH10s Sapphire Mirage, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank IKO Audio for providing the OH10s Sapphire Mirage for a review. To greatly appreciate it. IKO Audio, you rock. Okay, so the IKO Audio OH10s Sapphire Mirage. This will set you back $200 from your bank account. It has a 10mm dual magnet titanium coated dynamic driver and a Knowles 33518 balanced armature. 18 ohms of impedance, 106 decibels of sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 20 Hz to 40 kHz. Comes in this pretty nice looking box. Get some picture here on the front, some branding. Oh, has a high-res sticker. It's gotta sound good. You also got some information on the back. You got specs on the side. More information. It's a little bit of snug of a box to try to get open. There you go. Slide that off and you have a box that says IKO on it. Designed by IKO. There on the side. Flip open the top. And you're greeted by an envelope with some paperwork in it. And then you have an area for your IEMs to sit. You get this IKO pin. Interesting. And then you get a carrying pouch that's leather. It's not very big for your IEMs to sit in. It's not going to offer a ton of protection, but it'll keep the scratches off of it. Not really my favorite type of carrying pouch. You also get a cable management that's made of leather. It is branded with IKO on it. And then you get two different types of tips. Both are silicone. They come in this little tray. And you get black wide bore tips, which are kind of short and they're a little bit on the flimsy side. And then you also get gray wide bore tips, and they're a little stiffer and firm. These are the tips that I used. I didn't really notice anything different when it came to the sonic differences between the tips, but I did notice comfort wise the gray ones just stayed in my ears better. And then you get the OH10s. Now the OH10s comes with a cable that does this number, and it's very, very annoying. It tangles up every single time that you go to use it, and it's just a frustration, especially for a $200 IEM. This cable is very, very flimsy, and it's not very good. It's not very high quality, and I just find it to be annoying. And it takes a good 2 or 3 minutes just to untangle it every single time that you go to use your IEMs. So if you're excited about listening, maybe start sooner to build up your excitement. I don't know, because this takes a while to undo. While I'm doing that, I'm going to pause the video. I'll be right back. Okay, 10 million years later, we have the cable untangled. So the ear hooks of this cable are really, really annoying. They are not strong enough to hold the heft of the IEM. It's extremely thin. It is nice though in that they incorporated the copper alloy that the shell's made of onto the split. So it's a nice looking split. And then the cable just continues with a very tight weave, but it's just extremely, extremely thin. And then on the termination, which is a 90 degree, you do get that copper alloy again. And it's a 3.5 termination. Overall, this cable just feels flimsy, and it just feels like a second thought that IKO had about, oh, we need to provide a cable. And for $200, I would expect a better cable. All right, so the OH10s. Better have your cleaning cloth handy, as these are fingerprint magnets, and they're extremely gorgeous. Now, they are copper alloy on the shells, and then they have a photochromatic glass faceplate. Basically, the photochromatic glass will change colors when it's introduced into sunlight, and it'll kind of change into this bluish hue. It's really cool looking. I can't show it to you on camera, as for one, it's late at night that this recording is happening, and also we're not outdoors, but it does happen, and it is really cool to see when it does happen. You can kind of see the internals of the IEM through the glass. And it's just a really cool looking device, IEM. It's really pretty to look at. They are extremely heavy though. They are a very heavy IEM, and they are rather large. Now you do have a quite thick IEM here. As you can see, you have an aggressive angle. It is a smooth backside. There is no wing on it at all. It's not the longest of nozzles, but it is fairly long. Overall, I like the look of the IEM and all the coolness with the glass and the copper alloy, but it is super, super heavy. And so when it goes into your ear, it takes up a lot of real estate, especially in my ear. These are rather large, and they really don't fit me very well. Now, they insert nicely with that longer nozzle, and that kind of pulls down with the heft of them and the lousy ear hooks that are included on the cable, and it just causes for some discomfort. Every 45 minutes to an hour or so, I can wear these before they start hurting my ears. I'll have to take a slight break, and they kind of just pull out on their own, so I constantly have to readjust them. Isolation of outside noises when I have a good seal is actually quite good. It's probably somewhere about 60% of outside noises being blocked around the house, and in the office, light duty, that type of thing. These are going to do very well. They're going to block out most. You do have to take them out to have a conversation with somebody. Louder environments, cars going by, things like that, you can definitely hear that. So I like the look of the OH10s, and I like the design of it, and clearly ikko has some very artistic engineers when it comes to designing shells. It's just heavy, clunky, and not the most comfortable. The OH10s is actually rather easy to drive, being 18 ohms and 106 decibels of sensitivity. Had no problems whatsoever getting them to loud volumes with any dongle, desktop, or DAPs, and I barely used the volume knob on any of those devices. It was very easy to drive. They don't take much at all to get to loud volume. They are a little bit revealing of differences in sources, and they're a little bit picky when it comes to sources as well. A cold, analytical, very neutral leaning type of source is going to sound a little bit brutal to the ears. Using the OH10s, you're going to get a little bit too much presentation, a little aggressiveness from the upper mids and lower treble regions, and it's just not going to be a very fun and engaging sound. It's going to be a very direct and kind of piercing sound. Putting them on something that has a little bit of warmth to it and a little bit more natural sound is going to bring out the pleasantness of the OH10s, and it's just going to be more engaging and more pleasurable to listen to. OH10s, how do they sound? So the ikko Audio OH10s, is it a mirage of being better than the original OH10? Now, I didn't really care for the OH10 too much when I reviewed it. There'll be a link somewhere for that review. It was too forward, too aggressive, and had a lot of BA timbre, and it just wasn't the greatest resolving. Is the OH10s better than that? So the bass of the OH10s is very fun and engaging, and it has a nice reach into the sub bass, and you have a lot of mid bass and upper bass. The upper bass does bleed slightly into the lower mids, adding in some body and warmth. And the sub bass has a nice rumble and grumble. It's not the most sub bass prominent of an IEM, but you do get some rumble and grumble and down there when called upon. And then the mid bass is the feature. It has a lot of punch and slam, and you're going to have some authority, and there's nice texture throughout the bass. And overall, it's just a very pleasing and engaging bass that I really enjoy. The nice thing about the OH10s is it stays very well controlled on busier and heavier hard-hitting bass tracks. It doesn't get muddled and confused and go into one-note mode. It's very well controlled. There's very good space, and it resolves very well. And it has nice details, and overall the tonality of the bass is very good. It has a very natural tonality to it. The mids of the OH10s are also very pleasing. They have a little bit of warmth on the bottom end of the mids, and then going up through there's a slight rise in the upper mids, and it stays really well even and balanced and very cohesive throughout. The upper mids are slightly pushed forward, and there is a little bit more emphasis in the upper mids, but it doesn't become shouty or aggressive, but it does have a slight hint of a little bit of BA timbre. But overall, the mids have a very pleasantness to them and a nice warmth to them. And for the most part, they sound pretty natural. Just for that upper mids part, somewhere around 2 to 4K-ish, they'll have a little bit too much of an elevation and have a little bit of BA timbre, a little bit of metallicism to the sound. So strings and upper portions of brass and woodwinds and those type of instruments will sound a little bit off at times. It doesn't always affect, but it does come out occasionally, just enough to kind of remind you that there is a balanced armature. Then the treble. The treble is nicely extended. The lower treble is a little bit more emphasized, and at times can have the same issue as the upper mids, which has a little bit of BA timbre, a little bit of metallicism, as it's a little bit more too elevated. The rest of the treble is very well controlled and has a nice airy presence to it and has good space. And overall, I find that the treble is just very pleasing. So the bass, the mids, and the treble all play very well together. They're very cohesive, very nicely balanced, and you have a little bit of emphasis in the upper mids from about 2K to 8K going into the lower treble region. And at times it can be just a little bit too much, but for the most part, I find it to be very well controlled. The soundstage of the OH10s is actually really good. It has a nice width to things without sounding overly wide or constantly being pushed to be wide. It does a good job of portraying the sizes of venues, whether it be a small venue or a larger venue. And also it does a really good job of letting you read into the stage. It has very nice depth on the OH10s. And I find that you can really look into the stage and be able to see into the various rows. Also, the OH10s does a very good job with tracking things across the stage. They move across very well, and it does a good job of following things. So you can go, oh, it's right there, it's right there. Oh, it moved over, it did this. And you can also see things are side by side, and they're playing together, and one in front of each other or behind each other, and things moving around the stage. It does a very good job with that abilities. Also, I found that it's pretty precise in regards to exactly where it's at. Oh, it's right there. It's right there. The tonality of the OH10s is, for the most part, natural, except for that little bit in the upper mids and lower treble region where the metallic timbre will come out occasionally with certain instruments. As I mentioned earlier, things that are in the higher octaves will have a little bit of metallicism to them at times. And then detail retrieval and resolution. The details of the OH10s is very good. It retrieves a lot of information, and you will be rather impressed. You will definitely not be looking for information. It definitely gives you all that you need, and it resolves what it gives very well. It's one of the better resolving IEMs in its price point, and I find that the OH10s is a very good IEM that I thoroughly enjoy, and I was rather impressed. It definitely is not a Mirage, that it is better than the original OH10. How does it compare to a couple other IEMs that are single dynamic, single BA? So let's start with one that's half the price, and that is the LETSHUOER Giz Audio Galileo. Now the Galileo is going to have better tone and timbre. It's a little bit more natural. Doesn't have that BA timbre, that metallicism. It's going to be a little bit more on the natural side of things and reproduce instruments and vocalists better. It's also not as forward and as aggressive in the upper mids and lower treble region. But it's not as engaging, doesn't have as much bass, and it's going to be a little bit more on the boring side. And it doesn't have as good a details and resolution as the OH10s does. And then how does the OH10s compare to the Hidizs MS3? Now the Hidizs MS3 is going to have a bigger bottom end. It's going to have more power and more fullness in its bass and in the bottom end of the mids. But the upper mids and lower treble regions and main treble are more elevated and are more forthright and expressive, and they're going to come across as bright and hot. And the MS3 is more aggressive in its presentation. It has a little bit bigger of a sound stage, but it's not quite as resolving, even though it brings in more details. So I find that the OH10s is better overall than MS3. It's more pleasing and more pleasurable. So the OH10s from Ikko Audio, I didn't know what to think when I first was offered them, but as I heard them and listened to them and really started to compare them to other gear, I was rather impressed. And I really like the OH10s. It is a very fun and engaging listen. And for the most part, other than that little bit of BA timbre and slightly forward upper mids and treble, I don't have anything to complain about with the OH10s. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, and support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships for all that they provide to the channel. It is much appreciated. Thank you very much for taking some funds out of your own personal bank accounts to give back to a channel that you want to see continue and grow. So thank you very much. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are many ways that you can do it: through one-time gifts with PayPal and Venmo, or through monthly subscriptions with Patreon and YouTube memberships. There's all kinds of extra benefits, like getting access to my private Discord, or getting one-on-one conversations with me, or having private Patreon-only live streams and things like that. So check out all the links down below if you're interested in supporting the channel. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.